Tonight on Huckabee, Republicans attacking members of their own party.
Don't focus on the people in office, focus on those who you'd like to replace.
Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker with his solutions to the GOP infighting. And
the war in Iraq is over. Al-Qaeda has been decimated.
But now Al-Qaeda flags are flying in Fallujah. Soldiers who fought and lost brothers in Iraq tell us how they feel to see the Iraqi cities back in the hands of extremists. Plus, he says if good guys have guns, the bad guys will stay away. Detroit Police Chief James Craig, tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, Governor Mike Huckabee.
Thank you. Great audience here in New York, and we're so glad to have you. Welcome to Huckabee from the Fox News studios in New York City. Well, there's one thing standing in the way of Republicans adding to their majority in the House and releasing the Senate from the grasp of Harry Reid and his Democrat foils, and it's other Republicans. It was Jesus who said that a house divided against itself cannot stand. And neither Jesus' statement nor Obamacare have been repealed yet. Now, with the jobless rate continuing to keep many from being able to find enough work to pay their bills, with our overall economy only favoring those well connected to Washington or Wall Street, and our standing in the world decimated by bungled policies, embarrassing mistakes like getting caught spying on foreign leaders, 2014 ought to be a good year for the Republicans. But if something doesn't change, it's going to be a disaster. And we actually run the risk of seeing Nancy Pelosi back in the Speaker's chair. Republicans, yeah, my audience doesn't like that too much. Well, Republicans shouldn't allow the party's process to be hijacked by big bucks advertising campaigns, which don't always target liberals, but provide weapons of fratricide so conservatives can slice other conservatives to pieces, rather than focusing on the real contrast with leftists. Those who blame the Tea Party, well, I think they're misguided, because the Tea Party is a movement, not a structured organization. And as such, the Tea Party has rightfully helped the Republican Party refocus on the perils of spending money we don't have and borrowing money that we can't afford to pay back. No, it's the infighting, the backbiting, and the wounds from those who ought to be our friends that hurt us the most. When Republicans spend time and money to tear down other Republicans rather than to build up the country, why would we expect people to want to vote for us? People want to be led by someone who looks like he's going somewhere, not someone who looks like he's sorry he's been. We ask you to offer your thoughts on Facebook and Twitter as to how the Republican Party should go forward. Oh, and you surely did. Now, many of you used a term that, well, be honest with you, I'd like to see it outlawed from the vernacular of the party, the term rhino. It stands for Republicans in name only. It's a pejorative term that questions the authenticity and orthodoxy of someone's party purity. One of our Facebook posts from Bettina Flo said to me, "Get rid of all the rhinos, including you," speaking of me. Now, for one to imply that he or she is more pure a Republican than someone else is to assert that that one individual has either been given or has taken the role of keeper of the kingdom. Now, with all due respect, I fought in the trenches of Republican politics for over 2 decades, but I wouldn't pretend that I'm lord over determining who the real Republicans are versus the so-called rhinos. I think Wendy Harris has it right. Here's what she posted. They all need to be on the same page fighting for the same fight, we the people, and get rid of those who don't or won't. Then Jane Gladden also expressed some real common sense. She posted this: stand together. A party divided cannot win. And Raymond Davis sent this message to us. Quit beating on each other through all the ridiculous debates. We need to be the world leader respected by other leaders and really secure our borders and stop rewarding those here illegally. The most important thing, tell the truth and get our own house in order. Also, our thanks to all who sent in comments, but one thing ought to be certain. Someone who agrees with me 90% of the time is not my enemy. If factions within the Republican Party insist on spending time and money to attack other Republicans, I wonder if they want to win elections and save the country or just proudly boast to their party pedigree. I'd rather have a loyal dog who licks me than one with a pedigree who bites me. And I'd rather go to battle with someone who isn't perfect than with someone who thinks he is. And that's my view. I'm glad you joined us. And again, a thank you very much for your very many tweets and Facebook posts. Well, my first guest says Republicans ought to stop focusing on taking down other Republicans and concentrate on Democrats they want replaced. Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker joins me now. Governor, great to have you with me, and thanks so much for being a part of the show today. Last Sunday, you alluded to the fact that Republicans have to be very intent on defeating Democrats, not beating up Republicans. Let's talk about how Republicans need to turn the tide to win elections, because nobody questions your, I think, credibility as a conservative, but you have not taken the idea that we need to tear down other conservatives. So where do we go from here?
Well, you're exactly right. And I think for I and a lot of other folks, particularly governors who were elected in 2010, many of the people who helped elect us share our frustration, particularly with the federal government being too big, too expansive, too a part of our lives. And so we want to take action. But what I think we learned in Wisconsin, and in fact, I point out in my book, Unintimidated, other Midwestern governors in particular learned, was in 2010, we not only elected governors, we elected Republican majorities in our legislative bodies, and that made all the difference in the world. It's why we had in Wisconsin and Ohio, in Michigan and other states, Iowa, but particularly in those three first battleground states, we not only won, but we got big, bold reforms done. Why? Because we had a Republican team in place. In Washington, we don't have the same thing. We have House Republicans, people like Paul Ryan, my good friend, who are leading the way, pushing for true reform. But we still have a United States Senate controlled by Harry Reid and the Democrats, and we still, unfortunately, for the next few years, have a Democrat president. To me, the real focus should be not on fighting Republicans in primaries in the House or in the Senate, but in going to places like your state, Arkansas, and neighboring state, Louisiana, and North Carolina and Alaska, where this year in November, there will be real elections in the United States Senate that will determine the future not only of our party, but of our country. And we need to elect Republicans to those spots.
If your state had been divided, Republican versus Republican, would the reforms that you led ever have happened?
No, not at all. And I think that's true with what happened in Michigan with right to work. I think it's true what you see in other reforms across the country in states where Republicans now lead state legislative bodies and hold governorships. We were able to put a team in place. We had great help, not only from the Republican establishment, from a lot of grassroots activists in the Tea Party and other elements across our state who said, we're going to help you put the power back in the hands of the people. We're going to help the hardworking taxpayers be the ones in charge. But if we had to fight our own party to do that, we would have had tremendous difficulties, if not an outright barrier to that kind of reform. And so I think the real answer, and again, I share the frustration that many do, even after this last budget compromise is put together, but I said the real answer is to not to go out and attack Republicans who tried to push reform in the House or to try and defeat them in primaries. It's to go out and win those winnable elections in the United States Senate. Then after that, if a year from now Republicans hold the United States Senate and they hold the United States House, if at that point we can't get things done, then I think it's legitimate to hold people in our own party accountable. But in the end, I said it's sometimes I feel like there are some who want people in Washington on our side to hold their breath until the other side takes on our positions. Well, the reality is sometimes holding your breath too long, all that leads to is passing out. We need to make sure that we don't pass out, that we're there to fight, and we need to make sure that we fight not only now, but that we have a game plan to win in the future. And 2014 is that all-important year. We get the Senate back, and then 2 years later we elect a Republican president. And it's not just about winning elections at that point. It's about truly reforming the federal government, reining in the debt, reining in the deficit problems, more importantly, putting the power back in the hands of the American people. That's something we can do, but we can't do it if we're splintered off in many different directions.
Governor Scott Walker, great to have you here. Thanks so much for joining us on this weekend, and take care, and look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you. Good to be with you, Governor.
So what's your solution to fix the GOP? Tom Marine writes, quit the infighting. Sit down and talk. Have a realistic game plan. It's a good idea, Tom. We're going to try to do just that when we return. Stay with us.